we're live. Hey, everybody. So we'll just give people a second to come in. Very exciting. Hey, all. Here with the amazing, legendary Heather Booth. Come on in. We're just going to wait 1 second and let Substack load some more people in, and then we'll start talking. Let us know in the chat where you're here from, what part of the country you're calling in from, or the world, because sometimes we get people who are here from other places entirely than the United States. Quieter places. South Carolina. All right, Courtney, welcome. San Francisco, California. Excellent. Virginia, Chicago. Love it. Pennsylvania. Very important Supreme Court retention election coming up in Pennsylvania. Texas, Connecticut. Great. We usually get somebody from pretty much every state here. I'm always looking for Alaska. That's usually the last one to be represented.
Got important elections in Alaska.
Oh, yeah, that's right. There are, aren't there? When are those happening?
Well, I'm now, I'd like to do it on the Substack when you officially open up, but I work with a group called Battleground Alliance, and we're working in these marginal congressional districts, and there's an important one coming up in Alaska.
Okay, good. We'll talk about it. Great. All right. Well, people will still roll on, but we're going to get started, you guys. It is my extreme honor and delight to introduce to you Heather Booth, legendary, and I use that word literally, legendary, it's true, you can't deny it, activist, civil rights activist, someone who has been in this fight for a very long time, and she'll tell us how long. And I have the great good fortune of being on a call with Heather twice a week. I don't always make it, but I'm there a lot. And I think a lot of us come on the call. I mean, we get a lot of great information, but we also get to hear from Heather every time. And this is a woman who has shown up in so many different ways, but also has a really incredible ability to inspire and motivate and lift up others. So I'm just incredibly thrilled to have Heather here. And she's going to just talk to y'all a little bit about her story, some of the stuff that she's shared with me and with other people. And she'll just tell you a little bit about where she's been in the past, the things she's worked on, because you will be blown away. And then, what she's working on now. So Heather, I'm going to just hand it over to you.
Jess Craven, I am so delighted to be with you. You are a champion in the movement, and you spread out the message to give us hope and give us direction of what we can do, because we know that when we organize with love at the center, we have changed this world, we can change this world, and we will change this world. And it's so important that people understand that we can do this, even now in these very threatening times, even violent times, with terrorism by the right wing, by the many in that MAGA group, threatening our lives. But even when things are so challenging, we've made change in the past and will in the future when we organize with love at the center. I also want to thank just everyone who's looking in and will be listening and will be looking in, because you are the change makers. You are really the champions. You are the people who have learned about history in order to make history. And you're making history now, making it for the better.
Beautiful. Oh, so Heather, tell us a bit about, I was on a call where you kind of told us a little bit of your history, and I knew about the Janes, and you should talk about that, but I didn't know all of it. Going back to 12 or 13, I believe, is when you started as an activist. So do you mind giving us a little bit, like not the thumbnail sketch, whatever you feel like? Tell us about your history a bit.
Well, I was brought up to have values that believed that we want to have a society that works for everyone and that we care about people. And so the first thing that I was involved with was actually a fight against the death penalty when I was 13 years old. And I lived in New York City, and it was at a time where almost no one was against the death penalty. And I was so early in the movement, I didn't know how to do anything. I was handing out flyers and I dropped them. I gave more than one flyer to a person. Someone spit on me. I didn't know what to do, but I was in a loving community. Then it was with the American Friends Service Committee, and they cared for me enough that I realized these were my people and I could be part of that community. And now, because people have organized on those issues, the vast majority of this country live in states in which there is no functional death penalty. That when we organize, we do make change, even when it seems hopeless. Now, there's a pushback on even that, but we do make change when we organize. And from that experience, I had the good fortune of connecting with the civil rights movement and the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, or SNCC, SNCC, which in the North was called Friends of SNCC. And I became active in support of the boycott against Woolworths in the South when African Americans weren't allowed to sit at the counter. And then in 1964, as an 18-year-old, I went to Mississippi in the Freedom Summer Project. And many of you have heard about the Freedom Summer Project. It's where Northern students were recruited to support very courageous African Americans who were struggling for the right to vote. It's particularly interesting to mention it today because today is the birthday anniversary of Fannie Lou Hamer, who was the head of the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party and one of the great heroines of the freedom movement. If you don't know about her, you should learn more about her. Here's a picture of me at 18 years old. Here I am at 18. I often played the guitar for mass gatherings, but here's Miss Hamer, Fannie Lou Hamer, in front of her home in Rollville, Mississippi, with two of her friends in front of her home in Rollville. And during that summer, we were trying to register people to vote. And here's a picture of me. Hope the resolution is strong enough you could see it.
Yeah, we're seeing them.
That was just supporting a voter registration drive. No civil disobedience, just supporting a drive. But because there were people in illegitimate authority, the sheriff closed it down, and it was the picture before the first arrest in my life. And there have been others, but this one, I was a real innocent. And when they shut it down, we realized that you have to often stand up against illegitimate authority. And so people created the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, and we went out to people in their own areas, in their neighborhoods, in their homes, to register them to vote. And here's a picture of me in a cotton field registering someone to vote, who probably was only siding with an X because often African Americans weren't even provided with an education to learn even sometimes how to sign their name, for some. That's how desperate those times were, in many ways even more desperate than these times. But because we organized, within a year, we won a Voting Rights Act. Now, many of you know about that summer project because it's when the three young volunteers, Andrew Goodman, James Chaney, and Michael Schwerner, were killed at the hands of the Klan. But as I said, even though people were terrorized, we were able to defeat that system because we organized. And then in 1965, I went back to my campus in Chicago, and I engaged in additional movement work. A friend of mine told me his sister was pregnant and not ready to have a child, and could I find someone to provide an abortion? Now, in 1965 in Chicago, 3 people talking about providing an abortion was a conspiracy to commit a felony, a very serious felony. I'm not quite sure I knew that at the time, and I also didn't know anything about abortion, and very little, honestly, about reproductive health. It was at a more innocent time, and we would talk about sex even just with the most intimate relationships. A more innocent time. I may have been a more innocent person. But I went to the civil rights movement because one movement helps another. And I found a connection through Dr. T.R.M. Howard, an extraordinary person. I didn't know his whole history then. Also someone we should look up and learn about. There's a book about his life, by the way, called Black Maverick. And it turns out he had been an activist in Mississippi and even called for the investigation of the murder of Emmett Till, who many of you may have heard about, the Chicago teen who was killed when he visited his aunt because a white woman said that he whistled at her. And even that was a lie, which she recanted a few years ago. But after Emmett Till was killed, Dr. Howard's life was threatened, and he came to Chicago because his name was on a Klan death list. I called Dr. Howard, and he made the arrangements for this abortion procedure, and I thought that was it. I thought I had done a good deed, just again, following my values. That's how we do the work in the movement. We follow the values of our belief in building a better, more caring society. But then word spread, and someone else called. I arranged that again with Dr. Howard. And then word spread, someone else called, and I realized I better set up a system. Though there is much more to the story, and it's now told in one documentary called The Janes, which won 3 Emmys, and it's told in a Hollywood movie where Sigourney Weaver plays actually a version of me and someone else in a combined sort of Hollywood version. And there are other books and stories about it. But to set up a system, we decided to call it Jane. So rather than saying call Heather for this very serious activity that was not legal at that point, we said, pregnant, don't want to be, call Jane. Now, this was a time when women were dying in septic abortion wards in hospitals because abortion was not legal. And the women, over time, as I say, there's much more to the story, learned how to do the procedures, who I recruited into Jane, into this system. And the women of Jane themselves performed 11,000 abortions before Roe in 1973. And we made progress. We won Roe because we organized with love at the center, caring for ourselves, caring for other women, caring for people, caring for this society. And now again, this is also being pushed back, and women are being pushed again into back alleys or into states that are more sanctuary states. But we win and will make progress when we organize. These issues are popular issues in the American public. Over 70% of the American public believes there should be this reproductive freedom. 70% of the public believes there should be limitations on guns in the society, that there should be background checks. Large portions in the society believe there should be a pathway to citizenship for those who are undocumented. And increasing numbers are turning against a Trump regime because this is not what they thought the future should look like. Oh, there may be a hard core of 20% of Trump supporters, but this is not the future that people wanted. But it's not enough that people don't like what we're seeing, taking away our health care, raising our health care costs, that's forcing the shutdown that we're now seeing in the government, this Trump-created shutdown. What is going to be needed is that we do the organizing. And just as we went out to the cotton fields, just as we went out to people and organized, as we did then, we need to do it now. And when we organize, with love at the center, we will change this world.
Heather, I love listening to you. And I think you have obviously such a wealth of experience. I mean, you are a living history and a living legend. And I mean that. And I'm not trying to puff you up, but like the things you have done and the periods of history that you have lived through. I mean, we haven't even touched on the Vietnam War and all the other epics I know you were present in and active in. But I want to return to the Freedom Summer for 1 second, because when I heard you do this talk before, you talked about the family that you stayed with that summer and how unbelievable tragedy struck them. And I would love for you to tell that story. It's an deeply sad story, but I want people to remember I guess, to underscore the courage of the people who went out and did that organizing and supported the organizers, particularly the Black Americans who supported them at a time when life was literally at stake. And it was. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. I stayed with a remarkable family, the family of Andrew and Mary Lou Hawkins in Shaw, Mississippi. There were many remarkable things about them. Andrew Hawkins helped to create a sharecroppers union to raise the price of cotton per uh, per ton, or to amounts that people would be picking, so that they could have any kind of standard of living. They could feed their family. They also sued the town of Shaw to say there had to be equal public facilities, because in the white part of town there were tennis courts, and there were street lights and paved streets and indoor plumbing. In the black part of town, there was none of that.
Mm.
And so they sued the town of Shaw and won, even at the Supreme Court, because there was enough political power in the country to have a president and a Senate and a House that believed in fundamental rights for people. We do now see this being pushed back, but we can win those rights when we organize.
Mm.
But what happened to the Hawkins family, because they organized in that way, is their home was firebombed twice. And in the second firebombing, Andrew Jr., the son, and 2 of the grandchildren were killed. And then later, the sheriff killed Mrs. Hawkins. And no one was ever convicted of those crimes. I mention it now for many reasons, and you're asking me, but most people have never even heard about that. 4 people in one family who were killed. I know about it because I stayed with this remarkable family.
Mm.
But just imagine, this is one family. I know about it. What happened to other families? We don't even know. Those times for parts of the population were even worse than these times. We can't ever allow them to happen. But even against the hardship and the terror, because people organized, we changed those times, and we are not in those times anymore at this moment. You know, in those times in Mississippi, people would often say to each other in the movement, "Are you willing to die for freedom?" I very much wanted to live, but I was willing to take that risk if that's what it meant, that we took the risk in order that others might live. But now the question is a little different. It's, are you willing to live for freedom and democracy and justice? Will you do the work every day when it's too hot or too cold, or I'm too tired, or I'm too bored? I've already made my phone calls. I've already come out to the demonstrations. But now the question is, will we do the work every day? And one of the reasons I love being on this call is you, Jessica, and all those listening and watching. You are people who don't only listen and watch, chop wood and carry the water. You do the work. You do the work every day. It's also one of the reasons why I've joined the current work that I'm doing, and that's called Battleground Alliance. I want to tell you about that because it's quite a remarkable project. In addition to all the other things that are needed, the lawsuits and the demonstrations, I want to come back to those because October 18th, we have a big one. We all need to come out for that, including the courageous acts people will take, the non-cooperation. But we need to turn it also into political power and move from protest to power. And that's what Battleground Alliance is designed to do. And it's creating operations in 38 marginal districts in which we can take back those districts for people who are real advocates for freedom and democracy and justice. though we may have lost those districts to people who stand against that, who are taking away our health care, who are raising our prices, who don't care about the general population. But we can win and build organization. We can talk neighbor to neighbor. We can build coordinated campaigns with over a year to go from Battleground Alliance, and to build the kind of power that we'll need to fight for freedom in these times.
So a lot of people are asking for a link for Battleground Alliance. I will put it in when I send this video out to the list. I will put it in there. What do you happen to know? Oh,
It's battlegroundalliance.com.
.org, I think, right?
Or .org. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
.org.
okay.
But
So
there's a
you
website,
mentioned,
and you can contribute, you can support it, and the program is just developing, but we
yeah,
will be developing that program.
great, amazing. And you were mentioning Alaska. So talk to us for a second, Heather, because you're so inspiring and you're also like incredibly knowledgeable. You're in DC, you know everybody and everything that's happening. So we have important elections coming up in November. You also mentioned an important election in Alaska. So talk to us about the elections that are on your mind right now and why you think they matter, please.
Well, immediately there are elections in Virginia and North Carolina, and there's a Supreme Court election in Pennsylvania, and there are other state and local elections that matter a great deal. There's the New York mayor's race,
Mhm.
and we have real champions who are fighting forward. They're also preparing. In 2026, we can take back the Congress, but we need to begin the organization now. And part of what's inspiring right now is there's so many fine organizations to support. We certainly know about Indivisible and Move On and Public Citizen and many other groups that are coming together around these broad mobilizations. I do want to particularly pitch the October 18th events. I'm told there are now over 2,000 events planned for October 18th. Someone I just heard thinks that this may be the largest one day of demonstrations that has ever happened in the United States, and I understand may even be magnified around the world. We all need to come out, and we show our support and then move from one day's activities. There'll be other days too. I know November 11th will be a day to focus on veteran activities.
Mm.
There'll be student activities, seniors, and other days that come up. And then we also move from protest to power and organize with our neighbors in an ongoing way.
Thank you, Heather. Let me ask you a question. Just when I hear you speak, you're deeply inspiring, and like you inspire people like me, but everybody also needs somebody to be inspired by. So I'm always curious with people like you who are carrying so many people with your hope and your great energetic talks. Who do you look to for inspiration, or where do you find your source of hope? Where do you go when you need that sort of pep talk or just the bolstering thought?
In part, Jessica, I go to you and I go to others that are on your calls. I go to leaders of many of our organizations, Ana Lilia Mejia, who's the one of the co-directors of Popular Democracy, or Silma Arias, director of People's Action. There are leaders all around us. There also are some very visible public leaders, Jasmine Crockett in the Congress, and Jamie Raskin, and um, uh, Greg Kazar, who's the head of the Progressive Caucus. There's so many. Um, but I also find the inspiration in the real stories of real people, like those on this call now, those who are having their health care taken away by an unfeeling MAGA elite who want tax breaks rather than giving the health care that we need, and raising our prices, that we're going to see prices jacked up on health care around the country because of what this Congress is doing. But there are people standing up. It's one of the reasons we have this congressional shutdown now. And it's important that people spread the message that this Trump shutdown is caused because Trump and his supporters, members of Congress, want to raise our healthcare prices in order to give tax breaks to their wealthiest supporters. There's almost $1 trillion, I'm told, that's being taken out of the healthcare supports that we would otherwise have had, taken out of Medicaid and Medicare, taken out of the supports for the Affordable Care Act. And $1 trillion being given away in tax breaks to their wealthiest donors. And we have to spread that message. In fact, Jessica, one thing that occurs to me is there are actually 4 things that I think that we can decide to do, and I call them the 4 M's. The letter M. Trying to make a letter M with my fingers so you can see it. The first is all of us can recruit members, people. Just think of it. You're listening in as an individual. Maybe you're listening in a group. But what if you recruited 1 more person, 2 more, 5 more? What are their names? Write down their names now. Who will you contact and share this video with, share this podcast with, share this Substack with? What are their names? When will you reach them? Raise our members. The second M is message. What will you say? I've already said, I think, the message around this Trump shutdown, which is they're raising our healthcare prices in order to give tax breaks to their wealthiest donors. That's one message to send out. And you have your own stories. Who will you send it to? By social media, by your own podcast, in your book club, in your knitting circle, in your gardening club, with your family, your friends. Write down how you'll spread that message and do spread it. So members and message, and then money. We do need money in this movement. We're facing this mass of dark money that's coming in on another side. We don't even know who the length of the breadth of their donors may be. But we can also raise funds, not just to give our own funds, but to recruit funds from others. We need to think of ourselves as organizers of members, message, money, and the 4th M is movement. We need to show up for this Substack, show up for October, the October events, show up, and then November, December, show up for the elections, show up and build this movement for change.
Beautiful. I love it. And Heather, thank you. I think that is a beautiful and very easy way for people to remember the 4 M's. You said that you had a quote you wanted to share with us, I believe.
I do.
Okay, what is it?
As we're ending, I was thinking of a quote that was shared with me from Lord of the Rings. Now, in part, it's even appropriate to mention it today because in 1964, before we went to the Mississippi Summer Project, when we knew the 3 volunteers were missing, but we didn't know what had happened to them, the head of the Mississippi Summer Project, Bob Moses, shared with us the story of the Lord of the Rings, the quest for power that was corrupting, and yet the struggle for freedom and justice that was necessary. And toward the end in Lord of the Rings, a brutal overlord, Sauron, wants to destroy people's hope and sense of solidarity. He wants to break their will to resist him and make people believe that it's not possible. And a giant named Sam is listening and is himself depressed. And one of the Hobbit friends, Frodo, a leader of the Hobbits from this Middle Earth period, Middle Earth place where they lived.
Yeah.
They were alone in Mordor, the land of this evil ruler. And they are still questing for the ring, so that they have the power and Sauron and others don't have the power. and they're told it's impossible. You can't make it work. Sam and Frodo are alone in Mordor. They think they can't go on. Sam couldn't sleep. He held a debate with himself. It's all quite useless. You're a fool going on and hoping and toiling. You could have lain down and gone to sleep together. But you'll die just the same, or worse. You might just as well go down now and give it up. You'll never get to the top anyway. You'll never save Frodo. You'll never save yourself. And then he says, I'll get there. If I leave everything but my bones behind, said Sam. And I'll carry Mr. Frodo up myself, if it breaks my back and my heart. And he carries Frodo, and they survive, and they thrive. And there, the final quote, peeping among the cloud rack, above a dark tor high up in the mountains, Sam saw a white star twinkle for a while. The beauty of it smote his heart. As he looked up out of the forsaken land, and hope returned to him. For like a shaft, clear and cold, the thought pierced him that in the end, the shadow was only a small and passing thing. There was light and high beauty forever beyond its reach. And it is up to us to go toward and make that light. And that's what all of you do. I thank you again, Jessica, for having me on, being a source of light and love at the center. And I thank all of you for organizing. We will come through this and find the light and change the future.
Thank you so much, Heather. I'm going to just leave it there. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you, Heather. Thank you for all you've done, for all you are doing, for who you are. And I will send out the recording so that you guys can share this with everyone you know, because I know you're going to want to. And so much love, Heather. Thank you so much. Good luck with all of your endeavors, and I'll see you on the call this week.
See you, Jessica.
Bye, everybody.